Welcome, you curious souls, to this very, very late night session. Grab your coziest blanket, maybe double check the locks.
Definitely check the locks.
Because tonight we are diving deep, like really deep into the unsettling, sometimes just shockingly brutal world of Norwegian myths and, well, historical horrors. We're not talking about, cheesy Hollywood monsters here. Our reading, it reveals these tales woven like right into daily life, into the fears, the survival stuff of really isolated people.
It's where ancient beliefs and just pure raw terror kind of smash together.
Exactly.
It's a pretty profound look into a different way of seeing the world, honestly. Material we've dug into, I mean, everything from centuries-old academic texts logging folk beliefs right up to modern anecdotes shared on places like Reddit. And it just shows life in old Scandinavia was harsh. It was cold.
Yeah.
And pretty much governed entirely by forces you couldn't see.
Yeah.
These stories, they weren't just, campfire entertainment.
Right.
They were explanations. If your cow suddenly died, or sickness swept through the village, or even if you just heard a weird sound at the window.
There was something behind it.
Exactly. Some unseen entity, and usually, not a friendly one, responsible for it. It's a genuinely chilling history lesson when you look at it that way.
And what gets me is the specificity of the horror, like the idea that every single misfortune, every weird thing that happened, it had a name and a ritual to beat it.
The specific countermeasure.
Yeah. So our mission tonight is basically to unpack these really memorable, really dark narratives. We're going to explore, like, the water monsters that drag you under, the psychological spirits that kind of follow you home,
DBP ones.
and some just shockingly visceral historical true crime stories that honestly still feel haunting today.
It's going to get dark, let's be honest. You might actually feel a little bit of unease when you finally try to sleep tonight. But hey, that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
To find the most fascinating and, maybe the most terrifying corners of human history and belief.
Okay, but before we just, throw ourselves into the icy fjords, metaphorically speaking.
Well, metaphorically, yes.
We need to quickly tease out some of the absolute bombshells coming up later in this deep dive. I mean, these are the details you probably won't hear anywhere else, and trust me, they are worth sticking around for.
Oh, this is the good stuff. The guaranteed, can't unhear this kind of stuff. We are talking about the creature that was basically invented, purely it seems, to scare kids away from, slacking off on the toilet.
Wait, seriously?
I am dead serious. A terrifying monster called the Doddraugen that would physically climb out of your toilet bowl to drown you in the pipes.
No, stop it. Get out.
I am not kidding. Our reading mentioned a Redditor whose mother used this.
I am already looking at my bathroom plumbing with, extreme suspicion now. Wow. Okay. And we'll also get into the utterly specific, almost like prescription-level ritual you needed to stop a really nasty ghost. It involves, get this, 9 pieces of a cut-up silver coin.
9, not 8, not 10.
Shot straight through the Revenant's head. Because, apparently regular bullets just bounce off the really determined undead.
Seems that way. Silver shrapnel was the key. And, my personal favorite bit of historical drama we dug up.
Uh-oh.
The horrifying account of this 17th century woman, Ingrid, accused of witchcraft. Sentenced to burn at the stake, right? Standard stuff. Except the fire wouldn't touch her. It's just deflected, arsed around her. Until they figured out her secret protection, a tiny needle hidden deep in her back. And then, get this, in her absolute final moment, her evil eye supposedly ignited a massive forest fire, just for spite.
Okay, that is pure cinematic malice right there. That's amazing.
Sweet dark stuff.
Right. See, told you this was worth the price of admission. You won't want to miss any of that later on. But first, let's start where the danger was maybe most immediate, most constant for these communities. The water.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. This, foundational Norwegian fear. It really seems like if you were anywhere near a lake, a swamp, the ocean, there was something utterly terrifying living in it, something that personified nature's just sheer, cold brutality.
This fear is absolutely primal. You gotta think about the isolation, right? If you lived on an island or way inland near some huge dark lake, your whole existence revolved around that water. For travel, for food, for trade.
Everything.
Everything. So naturally, the water also became the source of sudden, inexplicable death. The environment wasn't just dangerous. It felt actively, malicious.
And the original, the freshwater boogeyman, the one you definitely told your kids about to keep them away from the murky edges of the bog, that's the Noken, right? Or the Nex.
Yeah. That's him. The Nuken is the ultimate luring drowner. This horrifying creature lives in swamps and dark lakes, and his main purpose is just to lure people out.
How does he lure them?
Our research suggests maybe hypnotic music sometimes, or just appearing tempting. He seemed particularly fond of tempting kids who felt a bit too confident about their swimming.
Oh, no.
Or maybe young folks drawn out by curiosity. The core legend is pretty grim.
Yeah.
He drags them down, drowns them, and here's the really horrifying part. He eats their bodies.
Eats them.
Yeah. So the corpse is never recovered. No body means no closure, right? Just this endless fear and uncertainty for the family left behind.
Wow. It's fascinating how, like, the water sprite idea is everywhere, but it got so uniquely dark in Scandinavia.
Right. You can trace the Nuken way back to Old Norse and maybe German mythology. You can see connections to, like, Greek naiads or nymphs.
Yeah, but they're usually portrayed as beautiful, maybe a bit tricky.
Exactly. Kind of mischievous, may be dangerous if you disrespect them. But the northern version that spread across northern Europe, the Nuken, the Fossagrim in Scandinavia, or even like the Kelpie over in the UK, it became fundamentally malignant, pure evil.
The difference feels like intent, maybe. Like the Kelpie might trick you by looking like a gorgeous horse, but the Nuken, he just feels like this raw hunger lurking in the depths.
Yeah, less trickery, more just baseline predatory. And this ancient myth, like we noted, it still has power. It's not just some old story. It feels like a genetic fear almost.
You think so?
Absolutely. We saw accounts in our reading from people like today who still refuse to swim in natural lakes or really dark water because the idea of the Nuken is just so deeply embedded in their psyche.
Wow.
It proves, you can rationalize these creatures away all you want, but that primal lesson, beware the deep, dark water that never really leaves you.
Okay, so if Nuken rules the freshwater, the huge, unforgiving ocean, it needs its own harbinger of death, right? And that brings us to the Draugen.
The Draugen, yeah. Nuken's much more dangerous oceanic cousin, you could say. A restless, really malevolent sea spirit, and the ultimate unmistakable omen of death for fishermen. If you saw the Draug, you knew you were basically done for.
And he's feared more intensely, I guess, because the ocean itself is just so much more dangerous. Like, Nuken gets one person, maybe, but the Draugen showing up could mean the whole ship goes down.
Precisely. The stakes are way higher, and his mode of transport is just visually terrifying.
The half-boat thing.
It's the unsettling the half-boat. In northern Norwegian tradition, the Draug sails in this craft that looks like it's been physically ripped in half.
How does that even work?
Well, it doesn't, physically. It stays afloat through sheer, like, necrotic willpower, I guess.
Yeah.
Imagine you're out fishing, maybe it's getting foggy, and you see this ghostly figure steering what looks like a broken canoe towards you. A canoe that should, by all laws of physics, be sinking instantly.
Yeah, that's unsettling.
That half-boat is the immediate, absolute sign of impending shipwreck and the death of everyone on your boat. It's like the universe just giving you a big spectral middle finger right before the storm hits.
And this fear was palpable, right? Like, sailors would blame sudden storms on him.
Yeah, they'd often attribute a sudden localized squall, just a small, vicious storm appearing out of nowhere, to the Draugen's passage. It meant he'd just claimed a life nearby.
Okay, but this is where we have to talk about that one story that brings the Draugen out of the huge, scary ocean and into, like, the smallest room in the house.
Ah, yes. The mighty Doe Draugen. The toilet Draugen.
A toilet drop.
This is just peak folklore evolving to enforce domestic tranquility or terror. One Redditor described their mother totally weaponizing this story against them as a kid. The Draugen was the specific version that would physically stretch out of the toilet bowl to drag misbehaving children down into the pipes where they would drown.
Oh my God, I swear I will never look at a toilet plunger the same way again. That is just brutal. Targeted psychological terrorism designed for maximum childhood impact. You're sitting there, doing your business at your most vulnerable.
Totally vulnerable.
And you have to worry about a sea monster coming up through the S-bend to pull you down into the plumbing. No wonder that kid was terrified of late-night bathroom trips.
It's the ultimate example of fear as a social tool, isn't it? Why bother with a monster under the bed when you can weaponize the plumbing? It's genius in a truly, truly horrible way.
Seriously, that is just wild. Okay, listeners, what do you think? Have you ever had a story used against you when you were a kid to make you behave? Like, I don't know, if you didn't finish your dinner, the cupboard monster would steal your socks or something. Comment below and let us know. We absolutely love hearing those personal folklore gems.
Okay, shifting slightly. Beyond the spirits, These waterways were apparently also home to massive, tangible creatures, the sea worms. These weren't ghosts. They were supposedly flesh-and-blood monsters lurking in the lakes and fjords.
These sound kind of like the Norwegian Loch Ness Monster, maybe, but based on the accounts we read, maybe more numerous, and definitely way more aggressive.
Exactly. They're almost universally described as black or gray, kind of shiny, definitely snake-like monsters.
Yes.
And huge. We're talking typically like 10 to 12 meters long, which is already enormous.
Yeah, that's big.
But some reports, especially from the 19th and early 20th centuries, claim they reached 30, maybe even 40 meters.
40 meters, that's like the length of a decent-sized building, just slithering around in your local fjord. No thank you.
And the descriptions of their heads, it's just this nightmare mashup. Observers often said they had heads resembling crocodiles,
Yeah.
or horses, or even moose.
Okay, picture this. A 60-foot snake with the head of a startled moose coming straight at your tiny fishing boat. That's just as peak visceral terror right there.
Yeah. The sighting reports make them feel weirdly real, though. Take that account from Hallandsvannet in 1969. Two brothers out fishing described this thing as long and black, red mouth, big round eyes, and here's the detail that just sticks with you. Sensory horns that looked like those of a newborn foal.
A newborn foal, that's so specific and weird.
Isn't it? It's that blend of the familiar and the utterly monstrous that makes it creepy. And one of the brothers, in a classic display of probably misplaced human bravado, apparently threw a huge stone right at its head.
Yeah, that'll show the 40-meter snake moose. Good plan. But the stories get genuinely dark, right? Suggesting these things weren't just shy cryptids, they were active predators.
Oh, yeah. The tale of Kurlatrolla, the Kurland troll in Lake Kurland, is truly brutal. Apparently the parish priest himself, Johann Fritzner Grieve, reported being chased by it, which lends the story this bizarre credibility.
The priest saw it.
That's the story. But the real horror attached to this particular creature is the legend that it overturned an entire bridal party's boat and swallowed all the people on board.
Yeah.
Just gone.
Oh, God. The whole wedding party.
The whole party. Last reportedly seen around 1910. It just underscores this constant existential threat these communities felt from the water. It could literally swallow your joy, your future, whole families.
And that Romsdalsfjorden chase in 1815, it shows they fought back sometimes. Like, this wasn't just a passive sighting, it was an active battle.
Yeah, 4 fishermen encountered this massive, thick, dark sea worm, maybe up to 50 feet long. As it approached them, one guy grabbed this gun and shot it, right in the head.
Did it work?
They thought so. But the creature just dove, immediately resurfaced, and then, apparently completely enraged, it swam fast after the men, chasing them all the way back to the shore.
Whoa.
The sheer speed and aggression of this massive thing, wounded but relentless. That's what turns the story from just a sighting into a genuine nightmare.
Yeah.
This thing was actively hunting them down.
Right. The message is pretty clear. The sea hates you. Stay away. The water is just this realm of known dangers, like storms, mythological ones like the Draugen, or maybe even biological ones like these sea worms. Okay, let's pivot. Let's move away from the visible, physical horrors of the water to the more subtle psychological terrors, the ones that reside in the mind and maybe the soul.
Yes, let's leave the cold fjords and explore the internal architecture of fear. We're moving into those subtle, less tangible concepts, rooted really deeply in the Scandinavian understanding of the self, of premonitions of the soul itself, and we absolutely have to start with the foundational idea of the hug.
The hug. H-U-G. Okay, this is such a key concept for understanding how they saw the world, but it's kind of hard for us, maybe modern listeners, to wrap our heads around initially.
Think of it like this. The hug is not really the Christian soul, right, which is seen as purely spiritual, separate from the body. The hug in this belief system is continuous with your physical self. It represents your thought, your will, your desire, your intent, your feelings.
So like the essence of your personality.
Exactly. Your essence.
Yeah.
And crucially, it can wander. It can detach from your body, sometimes without you even knowing it's gone. It's almost like a psychic echo of you.
Okay, so if your will or your intention can travel faster than your body, that explains that weird phenomenon, the Vartiger, right?
Precisely. The Vartiger is that audible but invisible presence that precedes a person's actual physical arrival. You experience hearing them knock or hearing their specific footsteps, maybe even hearing them call out your name.
Yeah.
Just moments before the actual physical person walks through the door.
Like their ghost arrives first.
Sort of. Our reading describes this first arrival as faint but loud enough to seem real.
Okay, that's the ultimate form of being, like, psychically punctual. Your consciousness gets there before your actual tired body does. I feel like I've known people who swear this happens to them.
And that's what makes the vertigo so fascinating. We found modern accounts, people who openly say, look, I don't believe in ghosts or anything supernatural, but they have consistently experienced this vertigo thing with specific people in their lives, usually people they're close to.
Really?
Yeah. They just know who's about to open the door because they literally just heard the spectral version of them arrive seconds earlier.
Yeah.
It kind of grounds this abstract concept of the wandering hug in a real, if maybe inexplicable, premonitory experience that definitely shaped how they perceived reality.
But, I mean, the very idea that your internal will, your hug, can just detach.
Hmm.
That sounds inherently dangerous, doesn't it? Like, it means your intention could be weaponized.
And that's exactly where the malice comes in. The hug could
Mm.
absolutely be sent deliberately. If someone, especially like a witch or one of the wise folk, held a really powerful grudge against you,
Yeah.
they could project their ill will through their hug, send it out to cause sickness or misfortune, or maybe even death to the receiver miles and miles away. It's like an explanation for any sudden random tragedy. It wasn't just bad luck, it was someone's traveling will attacking you psychically.
Wow, the consequences of just having powerful thoughts, good or bad, were like profound.
Absolutely. Your internal state could have external consequences.
Okay, so if the hug is about the traveling mind, the next creature on our list is purely about physiological terror, rooted right in the sleep state, the mare, or Mara. This is a monster that's basically dominated nightmare mythology across Northern Europe for centuries, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, the mare is iconic. And importantly in this folklore, she's not just a bad dream or an anxious feeling. She is presented as an actual physical entity, sometimes described as a troll or a demon, or sometimes, weirdly, as a grotesquely beautiful woman.
And she visits you at night.
She comes at night, yeah. And her method, her modus operandi, is terrifyingly specific. She lies directly on the sleeper's chest, pressing down so violently that they can't move, they can't talk, they can't scream. It is the perfect cultural explanation for sleep paralysis, right?
Totally. But it's the detail about what she does while you're helplessly pinned down. That's what makes this particular folklore so uniquely horrifying.
The tooth counting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the detail that just elevates the terror into something truly awful. The mare tries to stick her fingers into the sleeper's mouth to count their teeth.
Why? Why count their teeth?
Who knows why? But here's the fatal consequence.
Mm.
If she manages to finish the count, if she gets all your teeth counted, the person dies instantly from suffocation.
Oh my God.
Imagine that. Being completely lucid, aware you're being crushed, unable to move, and realizing the only thing standing between you and immediate death is keeping your mouth clamped shut while this supernatural thing tries to jam her fingers past your lips. That is just next-level psychological and physical body horror.
The silent panic must have been just unbearable. It's no wonder people relied so heavily on, like, countermeasures. What were the prescribed defenses against the mare? Did anything work?
Well, the defenses relied on the ultimate forces of protection in their worldview, the spiritual and the metallic. Apparently, shouting Jesus was said to make her instantly flee, proving the power of Christian faith against this ancient evil.
Okay.
But maybe more practically, steel was seen as a universal deterrent. Just suspending a knife or any sharp piece of steel directly over the bed was considered pretty solid protection. Metal, especially iron or steel, was believed to repel pretty much all malicious entities.
Right. Steel comes up a lot. Now let's try and tie the mare back to that concept we just talked about, the traveling soul, the hug, because this leads to one of the most brilliant little anecdotes in our reading, the one that kind of blends the mare with that whole swan maiden idea.
Oh yeah, the tale of the tailor and the spinning servant girl. This is great. So the story goes, a tailor and his apprentice were working late one night, right, stitching away, and the servant girl was spinning wool nearby. Suddenly, the spinning wheel slows down, and the girl's body just seems to go vacant, like she's slumped over, almost dissolved into a haze, leaving just her empty clothes collapsed on the stool.
Oh, like she just poofed out of existence.
Exactly. And the tailors, they realized instantly what was happening. She was the mare. Her hug had slipped out of her physical body, her vessel, to go off and do its nightly terrorizing rounds.
Okay, so that's the swan maiden thing, right? The idea that a supernatural being's real form, or their power, is tied to some secret object, like the swan skin, or in this case, her actual body. If you control the object, you control the being.
Precisely. If they get it back, they're free. So the tailors, being pretty smart, they didn't panic. They just kept working, stitching away, basically waiting for the mare to clock out of her horror shift for the night. Sure enough, around 9:30 p.m., the spinning wheel starts turning again, all by itself. And gradually, the girl's consciousness, her hug, returned, slipping back into her body and her clothes like nothing happened. The key was the tailors now knew her secret identity.
But knowing the secret is dangerous, isn't it?
Always. Because later, one of the tailors foolishly mentioned it, revealing that they knew she was the mare. The girl, realizing her secret was out, that she'd been compromised. She slipped out of her body again later that night and this time never came back.
Wow.
She just fled, confirming that knowing a supernatural being's true nature, their secret, gives you the ultimate power over them, or scares them away for good.
That whole concept that your soul, your hug, could potentially commit murder while you sleep without you even knowing it, that is deeply unsettling. And it brings us pretty naturally to the dead who refuse to accept their rest, the revenants, the walkers.
Yeah, the dead who walk in Norwegian lore, they aren't usually just random floaty ghosts. They walk for very specific, usually moral reasons. Either they committed some terrible crime they didn't atone for, like murderers or thieves,
Okay.
or they had some kind of unfinished, morally compromising business left behind, like an unpaid debt, or maybe they didn't get the proper burial rites. They were essentially a walking, rotting moral consequence.
And the story of Kvela Eirik is just a perfect stomach-churning example of this unexpiated sin thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's awful. So Eicher was this farmer,
Yeah.
right? And he'd gotten his servant girl pregnant. To hide his crime, his shame, he did something truly horrible. He pretended he was going to pick lice out of her hair while she rested her head in his lap.
Oh, God, no.
And then he suddenly stabbed her in the neck. Killed her instantly. He buried her quickly under a pile of twigs and just tried to, move on with his life.
But she didn't let him.
Of course not. She came back, a restless, probably very angry, vengeful revenant. Started causing chaos, unhitching horses at night, making the whole area basically impassable. Just generally making life hell.
So they couldn't get rid of her through normal means?
Nope. She was determined. The only solution was to bring in the big guns, a powerful religious figure, a minister, to basically force her spirit to confess what had happened, and the ritual the minister used. It's incredible. To compel this unstoppable, vengeful ghost to actually speak, the minister took out his penknife, cut himself right at the root of his thumb, and declared right there that he would write her full, true story in his own blood. Only then, faced with that act, did her spirit finally speak, confess the murder, named Eric. And because the truth was finally recorded, ritualistically, her spirit was released. It could finally rest.
Wow. That highlights the just profound power they placed on truth and confession and ritual acts like that.
Absolutely. Truth could literally appease the dead. But sometimes, it wasn't a murderer causing trouble. Sometimes it was just a particularly stubborn dead person who simply needed to be physically contained.
Right. How did they do that?
Oh, the determination to make sure the dead stayed put required some pretty extreme and sometimes kind of bizarre measures. There was the subtle approach of magical reinforcement, like secretly throwing an extra handful of dirt onto the coffin after the minister had already thrown his official handful, hoping it would strengthen the binding spell somehow.
Okay. A little extra magic dirt. What else?
Then you move into the household item solutions, which I personally find hilarious and terrifying in equal measure.
Like what?
Like distraction. The defense against a persistent, annoying ghost was basically giving it OCD. They'd use 7 brooms and vast quantities of flax seeds scattered around the house.
7 brooms and seeds. Why?
The belief was that the dead are pathologically unable to count things accurately, especially past a certain number, and they have this compulsion to pick things up. So the ghost couldn't count the 7 brooms correctly, or more importantly, it would get stuck trying to pick up every single one of those countless tiny flax seeds.
So it just gets trapped in an eternal loop of tidying up.
Exactly. It gets distracted from haunting you because it's too busy trying to clean. Honestly, that's just brilliant psychological warfare against a restless spirit. Genius.
Okay, that's amazing. But if distraction failed, what was the nuclear option?
Well, there was the really ancient, really brutal practice of just driving a stake straight through the corpse's neck. Apparently that dates way back, even mentioned by historians like Saxo Grammaticus,
Yeah.
pinning the body down physically.
Grim. But the most specific, almost recipe-like solution involved that tramp, Hans, and his magical silver shrapnel, right?
The tramp Hans. He was the ultimate ghostbuster, apparently. He was tasked with stopping a hangman's revenant that was causing trouble. Hans knew the rules, right?
Yeah.
First, he had to be super cautious not to let the dead man's shadow fall on him,
Why the shadow?
because the shadow falling on you would instantly place you under the revenant's power. So, stay out of the shadows. Then he got tactical. Knowing that regular iron or lead wouldn't work on this particular ghost, he took a small silver coin, painstakingly cut it into exactly 9 pieces.
Bobby, name again?
9 pieces.
Whoa.
Loaded them into his gun like makeshift silver shot, and then shot the dead man right through the head with the silver shrapnel.
Boom! Holy silver bullet, Norwegian style.
Pretty much. The revenant apparently disappeared with a great final noise like a shriek or a bang, and it was just never seen again. Poof, gone.
So silver was the key.
Silver, yeah. Being seen as this magically pure, powerful metal was the only thing potent enough to sever the ties binding that particular stubborn spirit to the world. Just a perfect little microcosm of how ritualized, how specific their magic and their protection systems really were.
Okay, we've seen the physical terrors lurking in the water, the psychological battles happening inside the mind and during sleep. Now let's transition fully. Let's move from the mythological monsters, terrifying as they are, to the human villains and the historical events that were equally, if not sometimes more, terrifying. Because, let's face it, sometimes the real monsters, they're just regular people.
Yeah, this moves us firmly into historical true crime territory, and we absolutely have to start with one of the weirdest, most enduring cold cases in Scandinavian history, the Isdal woman.
Right, 1970. This is relatively recent, and it's a case that still completely perplexes investigators today, doesn't it? A woman's badly burned body found on this remote forest trail just outside Bergen.
The initial details are just deeply, deeply unsettling. First off, the burn pattern itself was bizarre. Only her front was burnt. Her back was strangely untouched. Which is weird, right?
Very weird, like she was lying down when it happened or
Yeah.
something else.
Exactly. And near the scene, investigators found clothing, but with this crucial identity-removing detail. All the labels had been meticulously cut out. Every single one. This wasn't an accident. This was a deliberate act of erasing who she was.
That points immediately to something complex, right? Like a cover-up, an espionage thing maybe, or organized crime.
Or just someone desperately trying to disappear. She was later determined not to be Norwegian, adding to the mystery. Was she an intelligence operative? A professional criminal on the run? Someone trying to fake their own death and start a completely new life?
And then they found the suitcases.
Oh yeah, the plot thickens dramatically. Police found 2 suitcases at the Bergen railway station linked to her. And inside, wigs.
Yeah.
Multiple wigs. And notebooks filled with what looked like coded entries. Maybe travel plans, maybe contacts. Nobody knows for sure.
And her identity is still unknown.
Despite decades of forensic work, DNA analysis, isotope testing, her identity remains a total mystery. The circumstances are just so strange. Was it some kind of bizarre ritualistic suicide where she set herself on fire? Or was this an incredibly sophisticated murder designed to look like something else? The fact that the case is still cold, still unsolved, allows the psychological horror of this phantom woman, this woman who is actively erasing herself from existence, to just persist today. It's chilling.
That kind of intentional ambiguity, yeah, it's almost more terrifying than a clear-cut murder sometimes. Now, let's go back further in time. Back to the historical executions that served as these massive, gruesome public warnings. These stories were preserved in local lore, weren't they? Specifically because they used these really visceral descriptions of punishment to basically solidify social and moral norms. Like, don't do this or this will happen to you.
Absolutely. We're talking about the public executions at places like Gressholmen. These were community events in a horrifying way. First, there's the story of Anna Rogle and Ivar Knudsen. They were a pair of outlaws, caught after stealing livestock and then murdering a member of the posse that was chasing them.
Okay, so standard criminals for the time, maybe. Caught and sentenced to death by beheading. But the lore, the story that gets passed down, ensures the listener remembers Ivar, the outlaw, not just for his crime, but for his sheer, defiance, even in death.
That morbid little detail is fantastic, isn't it? When Ivar's head rolled off the execution block, the legend says his teeth clamped down firmly into the grass, contrary to the last, like a final screw you to the world.
Wow.
It's this small, violent act of defiance preserved in the story, showing that his criminal character just refused to yield, even when his body was literally severed, stubborn to the end.
That stubbornness is maybe nothing, though, compared to the absolutely horrific ritualistic execution of Stegel Anna, which means breaking wheel Anna and her 2 accomplices back in 1749. Reading the description of this, it's like something out of a medieval torture manual.
This was a deliberate, brutal display of state power and vengeance against a particularly heinous moral crime. In this case, it was the murder of two visiting Sami brothers, apparently over some dispute about liquor. The three criminals, Stefan Olsson, Anna Olsson, Stegelana, and Ivar Hansen, were sentenced to the most bestial, public, drawn-out execution imaginable.
They really made sure that every spectator and every person who heard the story later would remember the pain, the process, the whole ordeal.
It was designed to be excruciating and unforgettable.
Mm.
First, they were pinched with red-hot glowing thongs at 3 separate locations.
Pinched.
Yeah, basically burned with tongs. Once at the actual crime site, then twice more on the route to the execution grounds, and then finally at the execution block itself. This was all designed to maximize public viewing of their suffering. Drag it out. Once they finally got to the block, their right hands were chalked off symbolically, the hand that committed the murder before they were finally beheaded.
And even that wasn't the end of it, right? The final insult was the placement of the bodies.
Right. Their bodies were then placed on breaking wheels, those large wagon wheels used to display broken corpses, and their severed heads and hands were raised up on stakes nearby. This wasn't about quick justice. It was about creating a permanent, terrifying exhibit, designed purely to enforce social control and morality through raw, undeniable, historical dread.
But the truly chilling part of the legend, the folklore bit that gets attached to the historical fact, revolves around Anna's beheading specifically, suggesting that the execution itself was somehow resisted by her own unconfessed guilt.
Yeah, the legend holds that when it was Anna's turn, the executioner swung the axe, but her head would not come off the block. It just wouldn't sever.
Seriously.
That's the legend. And it supposedly wouldn't sever until she finally, in that absolute final moment, confessed to her ultimate, darkest secret. The murder, the infanticide of her own baby. Only once that sin, that ultimate moral failure, was publicly spoken, expiated, even under the shadow of the axe. Only then could the execution be completed. Her head came off.
Wow.
It's a perfect synthesis of history and folklore, isn't it? Reinforcing that community belief that sin, especially a hidden sin against the innocent, would literally prevent your body from achieving rest, even in death. Guilt made you physically resistant to dying.
Okay. We've talked about human killers, terrifying executions, but maybe the deadliest single figure in Norwegian history wasn't a specific criminal or an outlaw at all. It was the personification of disease itself. We have to talk about Pesta.
Pesta, yeah, the Black Death incarnate. When the plague swept through Norway in the 14th century and wiped out an estimated 2/3 of the entire population.
2/3? It's almost unimaginable.
Completely unimaginable. They needed a way to comprehend the sheer randomness, the totality of that slaughter. So, Pesta was visualized. Usually as an old woman, often arriving on a boat and carrying two very simple, very mundane farming tools.
Yeah.
A rake and a broom.
A rake and a broom. Why those?
Because the tool she chose to use when she arrived at your village determined its fate. It was an omen.
Okay, how?
If Pista arrived and you saw her using the rake, there was actually a tiny sliver of desperate hope. Because a rake, it only gathers part of the harvest. It leaves a few stragglers between the tines. So if she used the rake, some people in the village would survive.
Oh, okay, some hope. But the broom.
But if you saw her carrying the broom,
Yeah.
It was over. A broom makes a clear sweep, right? It gets everything. So if Pesta used the broom, everyone in the village died. No survivors.
God, that's such a simple, beautiful, and just devastating metaphor for the random, unstoppable nature of the plague. Just brilliant folklore. And Pesta, like some of the other spirits we talked about, she was bound by certain rules, right? Like she couldn't cross water on her own.
Exactly. That was a common belief for many supernatural entities, including the plague itself. It couldn't cross water without human help. Which leads to that deeply tragic, deeply fatalistic story of the ferryman's doom.
What happened?
Pesta arrives at the edge of Fair Lake and calls out for the ferryman to take her across. He obviously knows who she is, sees the rake or the broom maybe.
Yeah.
He agrees, but only on one condition. She has to promise him his life in exchange for the passage.
A perfectly reasonable request, considering her job description is literally mass death.
You'd think so. But Pesta, being meticulous death incarnate, she apparently checked her list, her book of death, and his name was indeed on it for that day. She couldn't spare him.
Oh, no.
But the story goes, she granted him the small consolation of an easy death, as he rowed her across just before she stepped off the boat on the other side, ready to sweep through his community.
Mm-hmm.
She simply pointed her staff at him, and he died. Instantly, on the spot.
Oh,
before she even got off the boat. It's just this gut-wrenching little story that reinforces the utter futility of trying to bargain with or escape fate when death finally calls your name. Some things are just inevitable.
wow. What a fantastic blend of historical tragedy, the plague, and this really potent folklore trying to make sense of it. Okay, so these forces, historical brutality, supernatural mandates, they all seem to intersect in our final section here, where we dive into the world of specialized magic, powerful witches, and the alluring but definitely dangerous forest folk.
Yeah, now we're really examining the supernormal powers of the wise folk, the incredible menace of those who use magic for ill, and those beings who lived in the forests and demanded respect.
And we have to start with the belief that certain groups, particularly people from Finland or Lapland the Sami, often referred to historically, sometimes derogatorily, as Finns or Laps, were believed to possess specialized, often really intense, magic. They were seen as warlocks, right? Their skills were viewed with a mixture of fear and respect.
Absolutely. The concept of the flying fin is a great example of this belief in their specific magical abilities. We found this story of a Finn hired hand working way up north in Lofoten, and he apparently claimed he could take a quick trip home, like hundreds of miles away, and be back the very next day.
Just pop home for tea. You're telling me he could just teleport.
Essentially, yeah. Through magical flight, using his hug, his detached consciousness, to prove it to the skeptical guys he was working with, he crawled under the floorboards of the cabin, started mumbling some incantations, and his jacket, which he left behind, apparently shrunk down to almost nothing, like doll-sized.
Whoa.
And he issued this really stern warning before he left. Do not, under any circumstances, touch the shrunken jacket while I'm gone.
Okay, so did he come back?
He did. He returned the next morning looking absolutely exhausted, but he had one piece of concrete proof. A silver spoon that he claimed was from his own home, hundreds of miles away. Proof that his hug had successfully traveled, retrieved an object, and returned.
But the journey itself sounded incredibly dangerous. And that warning about not touching the jacket, it emphasizes how risky this whole hug traveling thing was.
Totally. He admitted he'd nearly died on the return journey, caught in a terrible storm over the Vestfjord, and this near-fatal event happened precisely when one of the other men back in the cabin, overcome by curiosity, had disobeyed the warning and just touched the tiny shrunken jacket.
So touching the jacket almost killed him.
That simple physical touch apparently nearly severed the connection between his physical body and his traveling hug, demonstrating the intense vulnerability associated with this kind of intentional detachment. It's a clear warning. You should never, ever mess with someone else's magic or their anchor to the physical world, because you might accidentally kill them.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Wow. Okay, now let's talk about the ultimate seductive danger lurking in the natural world. The Huldra. Every mythology seems to have its beautiful forest nymph, right? But the Norwegian Huldra, she has some very distinct and very dangerous requirements for how you should interact with her.
Oh yeah, the Huldra is intensely beautiful, usually found in deep, hidden places in the forest or mountains. And her main goal seems to be luring mortal men into her world, sometimes stealing their souls, other times trying to marry them, maybe forcibly.
And her distinguishing feature, the giveaway, is the tail, right?
The tail,
Yeah.
usually described as a long cow's tail, which she tries desperately to hide under her skirts. Though interestingly, in Sweden, it's sometimes said to be a foxtail instead. And she lives with her cows, this unique herd of beautiful gray cattle that apparently follow her around as a form of, like, supernatural dowry.
Okay. And the influence of Christianity seems clear here, too, because the only way for a man to supposedly tame her or make her fully human was through a proper church wedding.
Correct. That's a common thread in the lore. The legend suggests that if a Huldra married a human man in a church, her tail would actually fall off, and she would become fully human. However, and this is crucial, she retained her inherent supernatural strength and absolutely required respect from her husband, which leads directly to that classic test of strength anecdote, demonstrating that even a tamed, tailless Huldra was absolutely not someone to be trifled with.
Okay. Tell us about the blacksmith and the horseshoe. This sounds good.
So the story goes, a man had married a Huldra who had lost her tail in the church ceremony. But maybe he got a bit complacent, maybe a bit lazy and mean, started taking her for granted, often ignoring her when she called him in for dinner from his smithy.
Uh-oh. Bad move.
Very bad move. One day, she'd clearly had enough. She walked right into his smithy while he was working. She calmly reached into the forge, grabbed a horseshoe that was literally glowing red hot, and proceeded to straighten it out effortlessly, using her bare, now human-looking hands, right there in front of him.
Just Ben's molten iron, no big deal, casual Tuesday.
Exactly, just flexing her sheer, terrifying power. She then looked him right in the eye and issued this direct, chilling warning. I could just as easily do this to you if I wanted.
Message received, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. As you can imagine, after that little display of literal superhuman strength, apparently they got along much, much better. And he never, ever ignored her dinner calls again. It's a fantastic story about demanding domestic respect, Huldra style.
And the way to catch or tame her in the first place, before the wedding, that involved that same magical repellent we mentioned earlier, right?
Steel again.
Yeah.
To initially capture the Huldra, neutralize her wild magic enough to potentially marry her, the lore says you had to throw a piece of steel like a knife, or even just a steel pendant over her head. This act supposedly bound her or broke her power temporarily. But as the horseshoe story clearly shows, even removing the tail doesn't remove the fundamental terrifying power underneath.
Okay, now we have to turn to the ultimate human vessel of malicious magic in these stories, the witch. And the documented historical horror story of Ingrid Eirik's daughter from her trial back in 1661. This isn't just folklore, right? This comes from actual trial records.
Correct. Ingrid Eirik's was clearly a figure of absolute terror in her community. She was formally accused of drowning a neighbor man's wife by casting a destructive spell, a classic use of that malicious hug or the evil eye we talked about. And the court found her guilty, sentencing her to the standard punishment, death by burning at the stake.
At the execution, it failed, like spectacularly failed, in front of the entire community who had gathered to watch.
It was an absolute disaster for the executioners and probably a chilling confirmation of her power for everyone watching. She was bound, placed on the pyre, the kindling was lit, but the fire just would not touch her. Witnesses described it as actively deflecting, roaring away from her body, refusing to burn her.
What did the judges do? They must have been freaking out.
Oh, they were panicking. They pulled her down off the pyre and searched her body 3 separate times, desperately looking for some kind of visible protective charm, some hidden object, some sign of sorcery, believing she must have had a demonic contract protecting her.
And they couldn't find anything until her own family cracked under the pressure.
Exactly. Her stepdaughter finally broke down and revealed the crucial final secret. She testified that her stepmother, Ingrid, had actually boasted previously that she could only be killed by powder, meaning gunpowder. Like from a gun, not by fire, as long as she possessed even the tiniest piece of iron or steel on her body.
Oh, the skill connection again?
Armed with this new information, the desperate judges searched her one last time. And this time, deep, almost surgically embedded in the thick flesh at the small of her back, they finally found it. A tiny, almost invisible, innocuous sewing needle.
A needle, that's it.
That tiny piece of iron was apparently what was rendering the holy fire, the execution fire, powerless against her. It was her demonic loophole.
So once that needle was removed, she knew her fate was sealed. But she wasn't quite done yet, was she? She had one final magnificent act of pure spite left in her.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
As they were preparing her for the now inevitable execution, presumably by some other means, maybe beheading, since the fire failed, she asked the judges for one final request. Just to look out one last time, toward the woods and the mountains beyond the river. They, probably thinking nothing of it, maybe pitying her, pulled the blindfold aside from one eye for just a moment.
Okay.
She barely even glanced out, just cast her final, powerful, evil eye towards the forest. When suddenly, instantly, a massive forest fire erupted. It began to crackle and consume the treetops as far as her gaze could reach. Just boom,
Oh my
fire.
God, what an unbelievable display of commitment to malice. You almost have to respect the sheer audacity of that final act. Like, okay, you got me, but I'm taking the forest with me.
Right, it was the ultimate scorched earth, mic drop exit for a condemned witch, proving her immense destructive power even as she faced her own final moment. An unforgettable story.
Wow.
So, when you look at all this reading together, the flying warlocks, the half-boat dragon, the unburnable witches counting teeth, it just becomes incredibly clear that for these people, the line between what we'd call folklore and documented history, between the magical and the mundane, it was basically non-existent. Everything had a rule, everything had a spirit, and everything had a purpose, often a terrifying one.
We have covered some serious territory tonight, folks, from haunted travel agents, basically, with the flying fin, to toilet monsters, to brutal historical executions. If you loved these truly deep dives into Norwegian oddities and horrors, please do hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We are still a pretty small channel, and we would absolutely love to have you on board with us for more of this weirdness.
And really, when we synthesize all this, it seems clear these stories were absolutely necessary survival mechanisms in these isolated, often harsh communities. They provided structure. They provided explanation for every single inexplicable event, from a sudden illness to a serious disappearance out at sea. And they enforced respect for your spouse, maybe, like the Holder story. Respect for the dead, absolutely. And just total respect for the uncontrollable, often terrifying natural world around them.
So, seriously, thinking about all this, which of these mythological beings would you honestly rather face? A drogue in his shattered half-boat during a sudden squall? Or the mayor trying to count your teeth while you're totally paralyzed? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below.
We'll leave you with this final, truly unsettling thought to ponder as you head off into the night, maybe towards bed. Consider that core concept we discussed. The hug. The idea that your consciousness, your desire, your intent could detach and precede you, or even be projected outwards to bring harm to someone else. Now, think about our modern, hyper-connected world. We often dismiss feelings like bad vibes or that creepy sensation of being watched as just, anxiety or imagination.
Yeah.
But could those feelings just be linguistic survivors? Echoes of that old, powerful belief that your hug, your raw intent, could still actually reach out and bring harm to someone, even if you're miles away, simply through the sheer power of your thought. Something to think about. Sleep well, and maybe check under the floorboards for any shrunken jackets.
Definitely check the toilet before you use it. Just saying. Good night.